get mine. You get yours, I get mine. You get yours, I get mine. Alright, then I'm gone. You get yours, I get mine. You get yours, I get mine. You get yours, I get mine. Alright, then I'm gone. You get yours, I get mine. You get yours, I get mine. You get yours, I get mine. Alright, then I'm gone. You get yours, I get mine. You get yours, I get mine. You get yours, I get mine. Alright, then I'm gone. Movie screens, then life's the biggest production, and it's a bitch with a big appetite for seduction. All of a sudden, niggas busting for a big introduction.
Hey y'all, this is Daniel. Welcome to Blunt Talk, baby. How we doing? This is episode 18. Yes, sir. You know how it is. You know the vibes. This means the long-awaited NBA playoff prediction episode is happening, folks. This is it. I was waiting ever since the second season of the pandemic started to do the playoff predictions. And yeah, let's get it going. I'm recording this as the first day of the playoffs, which is May 22nd of 2021, obviously. Today's matchups, I believe we got the first game is the Miami Heat game versus the Milwaukee Bucks, which I'm very intrigued for that series. And, well, let's start cracking. I'm going to start off with the Western Conference, and I'm going to just go down through the matchups and tell you my honest opinion on it, because I've been watching a lot of basketball this season, and I'm very confident and adamant of what I got to say. So the first matchup that I'm going to look at is the Utah Jazz versus the Memphis Grizzlies. If you didn't watch the game yesterday, Memphis locked up Steph Curry at the end of the fourth quarter in regulation, and they really did a good job on guarding Steph Curry. He still dropped like plus 30. I think he went over 40 points, if I'm not mistaken. But that Memphis team proved to you why they should have won that game. That Warriors team was just not putting in as much effort as Steph Curry was. There was two different types of efforts, in my opinion. Steph Curry, the Warriors. And like Steph Curry was like here, and then the Warriors were down here. So when you really think about it, Memphis is a team with a lot of momentum now. I like a lot of their players. Brandon Clark isn't a part of their playoff rotation right now at the moment. I thought he got injured or something. He's just there chilling on the bench. When Jaren Jackson Jr. was out for Memphis, that guy was the starting power forward and doing a lot of things for that team. A lot of the little things like rebounds, hustling, steals, playing defense, running from the side of the court. Oh, my goodness, man. I'm surprised he's not in the rotation. But they got young cats, Grayson Allen. Everyone hates Grayson Allen. But he's still balling for Memphis. He's doing his thing. Dylan Brooks. I've never seen Dylan Brooks play like that. I know he was a shooter and that he could slash from time to time. But like in these couple playing tournament games that we've seen, man, he's been a very aggressive player. And John Moran just had like a 30-piece, like nothing. He didn't play well against Wallen State like a week ago when the end of the season was happening. That matchup was very significant for the playing tournament spots. Warriors won and they got the advantage and they still managed to lose. So I don't want to hear people complain because like there's a lot of mixed opinions on the playing tournament. People liked it. People hated it. I'm one of the people that I loved it because it shows you can't take the regular season for granted. You got to actually put in the effort and work day in and day out throughout the season. Might get rid of the problem of resting like Kawhi Leonard and all those other big star names do. I don't know if it will, but it might have to make you double think about it 2 times now and be like, wait a minute, should I actually be sitting out for this game or should I play this game just so that we can avoid this? I like what they did with this. Memphis versus Utah, though, it's the Mike Conley revenge game, revenge series, if you want to call it. Mike Conley is the first time, it's the first time that he will be playing his former team in the playoff series since he got traded. And for people that don't know, Mike Conley is the all-time leading scorer in Memphis Grizzlies history, if you didn't know. So Mike Conley meant a lot to the Grizzlies. So I feel like this is going to be an intriguing, nice storyline series, but it's not going to do much because I don't know if for Donovan Mitchell, the report said that he is planning on playing game 1 after finally coming back to practice with the team for the first time and since his injury. The problem with that is I just don't know if he'll be rusty or not. But rusty Donovan Mitchell or a great Donovan Mitchell, it don't matter. This Utah team is too much for the Memphis Grizzlies to handle. I give this like this is probably going to be a sweep or a gentleman's sweep. And I wouldn't be surprised if I'm wrong, honestly, because this Memphis team could probably get more games out of them than I'm giving them credit to. But I want to be safe. I'll stay on the safe path with my prediction for there. The next matchup we got the Los Angeles Clippers versus the Dallas Mavericks. Hold up. People, Do y'all remember what was the first round matchup for the Clippers last year? It was the Dallas Mavericks. The Clippers were a 2 seed and the Mavericks were a 7 seed. Now it's a 4-5 matchup. It shows you that these teams are more even than you actually think. My problem with this series, though, is going to be very reliant on how far can Luka take you. Because as a person that has seen a lot of the games this season, and I've seen my fair share amount of like Dallas Mavericks games this season. I love the way Luka can play, the way he dribbles, the way he handles, the way he can get by a defender or make a defender just think he's going to go by him and then like hesitate and fake them out for like one of his long jump shots. Like this man has some crazy step backs. The Dallas Mavericks roster, however, I don't know because they need their players, like their role players, to have like great role player games. They need Tim Hardaway Jr. to go like 6 from 3. They'll need people like Jalen Brunson to actually have 18 or 20 points off the bench. They're going to need their role players to actually step up in the series against the Clippers because the Dallas Mavericks team is, even though they have a better record, they're still not that much of a different team from the last Dallas Mavericks team that played the Clippers in the playoffs last year. And my concern with that is Porzingis has looked very decent this year. I'm not going to lie. Porzingis has looked like a serviceable player. I'm not trying to say he's trash. He doesn't look like a star player, and everyone needed and thought he was going to be that star player for Luka. And now it shows you that Porzingis can have a couple games throughout the season. I think he had like a 27-point game and like some great efficiency like the last month of the season and everything. But I just don't think that Dallas Mavericks have enough to play against Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. And I'm kind of thinking Paul George might not have that slump that he had last year playoffs. I think Paul George is very angry and trying to prove us wrong. And I hope he can do it because it'd be awesome to see him like make a comeback in that sense. But again, we always say that. And then Paul George fails in the playoffs in the recent years because people forget Paul George was doing his thing in Indiana against LeBron, and if it wasn't for LeBron, he probably could have gone out of the East those years. Just saying. People don't want to admit it. But, yeah, I say this is a 7-game series, though. You can't tell me it was like a 6-game series last year, and Luka got better this year, and it won't at least go to 6 games. You know what I'm saying? The X factor for me in this series is going to be the Rajon Rondo effect. Can Rajon Rondo do it against the Mavericks and be that point guard that the Clippers needed last year's playoffs, a facilitator, a playmaker? We'll have to see because playoff Rondo is something else. But how much more does playoff Rondo have in the tank? We never know. But I'll give the 7-game series nod to the Clippers because I think Paul George and Kawhi Leonard are really going to be on like a tear for these playoffs. Not saying they'll win, but I think they're going to bounce back better than last year's playoffs in their appearance that they did. Next matchup in the West is the Denver Nuggets as the 3rd seed against the 6th-seeded Portland Trail Blazers. This is my thing with the series, man. I am really sad that Jamal Murray is injured because it would have been so fun to see Jamal Murray versus Damian Lillard, trade shots back and forth, see who can one up one another. In a basketball, like in a game 4 going down the wire, like that would have been a crazy scenario. However, I just think this Portland team, even though they are one of the hottest teams currently in the league, I believe they won like 7 of the last 9 or 10 at the end of the season. And they're finally clicking on all cylinders. Like CJ McCollum's back from the injury. It's finally looking like he's dropping like 20 pieces again. Damian Lillard doesn't look like he's stopping anytime soon. And this man, Norman Powell, is a great contribution to the team. And even though it's a weird integration, as in the starting lineup, him being a little undersized and needed his shots too, and that's more people to share the sugar with, they still made it work. But again, I just doubt on Portland's defense because at the end of the day, Nikola Jokic for Denver in a series is going to be too much to have to deal with for people like Robert Covington, Carmelo Anthony, Enes Kanter, Harry Giles. I don't even think Harry Giles plays significant minutes for them. Yusuf Nurkic, what am I saying? Yusuf Nurkic. I don't think Yusuf Nurkic, although he has been really good on defense, I don't know if he'll be able to sustain Jokic for like a 7-game series. And on the other side, Denver's defense, even though it's not like a top tier defense, I feel like Portland can like have a couple games this series where they can just go off, like firing on all cylinders and never missing and just winning the games like that. Because for Denver, with Facundo, I don't know if Monte Morris or Will Barton are going to be back for the series, but like if Facundo Campazzo is the only playmaker point guard, you're going to be struggling at eventually with like the rotations and everything. So this is a close call. I'm gonna give it to Denver, and the only reason I'm giving it to Denver is just because they have Nikola Jokic, and I feel like if he wins MVP, he's just gonna go and try to go on a tear, and I don't think Portland can stop him. I just don't think they can stop him. Damian Lillard's gonna be hard to stop this in the same way for Denver, but I think Jokic will be more of a problem than Lillard would end up being a problem to knock Denver. So I put Denver advancing with 7 games too. There's no chance in hell that you're telling me this series is not a 6-7 game series. This is at least 7 games, in my opinion. Next matchup in the West, we got the 2-seeded Phoenix Suns versus the 7-seeded Los Angeles Lakers. Now, let's keep it 100. This just might be the most toughest 2-7 matchup in the history of NBA playoffs. I feel like it's fair to say, if you really want to think about it, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Dennis Schroeder, Andre Drummond, Kyle Kuzma, KCP, Taylor Horton Tucker, Alex Caruso, Wesley Matthews, Marc Gasol, Montrezl Harrell. Yeah, I just mentioned all the names on the roster. That does not sound like a 7 seed in my opinion. And people forget the only reason they're this low. It's not because like LeBron lost his step. It's really just because of the injuries, and they got affected during the season, and they just were never able to bounce back. But people don't realize just at the start of the season, for like the first 1 or 2 months at least, weren't the Lakers like ranging from the 2 seed all the way to like the 4 seed, back and forth? Like, I'm just saying, now that they're all healthy, I know that they haven't had as much time to click and gel and just like get some chemistry under their belts, but it's like kind of like a Brooklyn Nets scenario. I'm gonna find it really hard to bet against them unless I see it happen before my own eyes, and I accept defeat because I feel bad for Phoenix. The Phoenix Suns are one of the most entertaining and most craziest teams to watch this season. And when I say crazy, it's just because you look at what, like, the one fact is they haven't been to the playoffs in 10 years. Another thing is, like, they did really great in the bubble, but that was just like an 8-game sample size. You could say what you want. That was awesome. But like, I don't know what to have made of that. So once they did that Chris Paul move, it turns the tables around, because now having a person like Chris Paul on the team, bro, that's perfect fit for Devin Booker, a person that needs to have someone give the ball to him in his perfect spots and everything. So I really like this addition, and it shows. If you look back at my NBA preview episode here in the podcast, I said Phoenix would be what? A playoff team or a play-in tournament team. They would have a good team, but I just can't see them being like a top team in the West right away. Boy, was I proven wrong. God damn, they finished as a 2nd seed. So you're telling me you got a 2nd seed with 49 wins or 50 wins? I'll look into that while I'll keep talking on it. But yeah, a team like the Phoenix Suns with like Chris Paul as a floor general at 36, 37, still doing what he's doing. And then you got Devin Booker, who has been such a prolific scorer for his whole career. You gotta tell me that these guys got to face down LeBron, AD in the first round. That's just crazy. I don't even know what to make of the matchup, because at the end of the day, sure, in the play-in tournament game, LeBron looked like a G because he got the game winner. He did all of that against the Warriors, and they finally made the playoffs and everything. Is that the LeBron we're gonna get for this whole series? I need to see it to believe it. I was wrong. Phoenix had 51 wins this season. In a shortened season, you're telling me you're getting to 50 wins, and you still face LeBron James in the first. That's insane, man. And my thing with this is, I feel like you can't go wrong in your matchup, but like, as much as it pains me to say this against the Phoenix Suns, I'm just for being safe, I'm gonna have to pick the Lakers. I'm gonna pick the Lakers over Phoenix in the 7-game series. I know I had 3 7-game series in this first round in the West. Crazy. but I have to give it to the Lakers. Unless I see, I don't care. If I'm wrong, then screw it. I'm wrong. But I'm going to have to go with LeBron. I can't bet against him in the scenario. It's the playoffs. He just won a title last year in one of the weirdest seasons ever. What do you want me to say? I'm giving it to the Lakers 7-game series. Let's go on to the East now, and then we'll go on after I'm done with the East. I'll quickly go over for the second round matchups. Let's see. Let's start off with the end of the bracket. Brooklyn Nets versus the Boston Celtics. Now, that Boston Celtics performance, my bad. That Jason Tatum performance. Yeah, don't get it twisted. It's like the Steph. That's Jason Tatum's scenario now because of the Jaylen Brown injury. It's basically the Steph Curry scenario with the Golden State Warriors, bro. This man, Jason Tatum, really is going to have to do 50-piece nuggets every game this series in order for Boston to be in the game. That's, if I'm being honest. Kemba Walker's going to have a parade against Kyrie Irving and James Harden. I know they're better defenders than we give them credit to, but I feel like them both finally being back together, they're gonna have some defensive mishaps. I'm not trying to say anything crazy out of the ordinary, but they're gonna be pick and roll situations or things that Kemba's gonna be more open than I think he should be, and it'll come to benefit for him. But the X factor, the wild card here, really is: do these three guys, aka KD, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving, coexist? Because I want them to. Don't get me wrong. I actually would like to see how it works. It's like, it wasn't a problem when we had the LeBron James Miami Big Three with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh until like Chris Bosh couldn't play because of block cuts, and that was way back in the Big Three era of that organization. Like, these guys really haven't been able to play. It's not, bro. It's not even like KD when he went to the Warriors, that Big Three. It's not even like the Ray Allen, KG, and Paul Pierce and Rondo Big Four. These guys really haven't played. So it's really of a concern to me because will they even play well with each other? They're great individually, but sometimes there's you can't tell me there's not going to be situations if it's a close game that they're all going to want the ball, bro. Like, the one I trust, I don't know how to really describe it because it's a weird feeling with me with this Brooklyn Nets team because this team, their bench is actually really not better than people were giving them credit to. They blew it up and they somehow retooled the bench like nothing. They kept Joe Harris. Joe Harris is looking like a crazy star for these guys, like one of the best role players for this team. DeAndre Jordan doesn't play that much anymore, but DeAndre Jordan's no slouch. Nicholas Claxton can fucking I apologize for my language. Nicholas Claxton can switch on the perimeter guys. He's got good lateral movement. He's an energy guy. Nicholas Claxton's got a bright future in the NBA as a big man. Who else they got? Timofey Luwawu-Cabarrot, Landry Shamet, Blake Griffin, LaMarcus Aldridge couldn't play. Like, they have a bench now, and it's actually intriguing to see because if this Brooklyn Nets team loses, it doesn't matter what round. If they just lose in general, I feel like it's just a disappointment because it's like you have it all in the palm of your hand, and this team, it's one of the greatest teams I've paper-wise, talent-wise, and actual on-court what you're doing-wise I've ever seen. So, sadly for Boston, I see this being a gentleman's sweep, at least. At least. I'm not going to say it's a sweep. Boston's going to definitely get a game at least over Brooklyn Nets just because these guys haven't played with each other that well. I mean, not that well. I apologize. That often. So the chemistry's still going to be, it's going to be a little iffy. You can't tell me game one of the series, like it won't look a little iffy until like a couple quarters in. Let's go to the Milwaukee-Miami matchup. As of the time of recording, 33 minutes are remaining till this game starts, and I'm down to watch it. It's crazy how some of these matchups ended up being because this matchup is basically a rematch from last year in the bubble, the year Giannis won his second MVP. Everyone was like, let's see if he can do it this year. He's supposed to. Then he gets injured in the second round and they lose to Miami. I really think Giannis and the Bucks are going to have a revenge series this time. I really think it's their time. The momentum they got is there. They don't got to deal with being like the number one hyped up team in the conference now because there's both Philadelphia and Brooklyn to worry about. They can kind of go under the radar. And I feel like the matchup, if it ends up being like second round Brooklyn Milwaukee, it favors a little bit Milwaukee too, because Milwaukee can play lockdown defense on these guys. And I don't know if Brooklyn will be able to play as great lockdown defense as Milwaukee. I guess the regular season, the times they played, and they were leaving Giannis open, and they won't do that in the. I don't want to hear it. That shows you still when they're not even trying that it was that easy for the other team and for the other guys. So like they gotta try for me to see and be like, okay, they can stop them. And my problem with this Miami team, I really like this Miami team. Don't get me wrong. Jimmy Butler, if this is the thing, if Jimmy Butler never got injured, he basically would be an all-NBA first player, all-NBA first team, or at least all-NBA second team minimum, in my opinion. Because this man came back from the injury and the COVID situation in the start of the season and turned the whole season around for Miami. Bam Adebayo was struggling by himself, and like there was no Tyler Hero. There was like no one. They were playing with like 8 guys for like 2 weeks or like 3 weeks in the season. That took a toll on these guys. Jimmy Butler came back and had them bounce back. Bam Adebayo was playing really good statistically too, but like with the record that they had, it just wasn't enough to make a good case for him to be an all-star this year, sadly. But my thing is this, man. If this Miami team is going to be able to beat this Milwaukee team, they're not going to be able to just do it based on their defense, because their defense is A-class. Like it's on the top tier or the top of the pyramid in the NBA right now. It's up there with the Knicks, the Lakers, and like teams like the Clippers too. Those 4 teams defensively are in a class in their own, in my opinion. You can put in Utah too. You can put in Utah to round up the top 5, but those are my top 5 defensive teams in my opinion. Miami struggles to score a lot this year. It's just because Miami, I know Miami won't have a problem locking up Milwaukee, but I know Milwaukee this time will be able to lock up Miami as well. So I have more confidence in Milwaukee scoring more games over Miami. So I see this being a Milwaukee winning the series. I think 6 games. I'll go for 6 to 7 games, and it's not personal against Miami. It's just I really do think this is the time for Giannis. This is one of the best opportunities for him, because there's no clear-cut favorite, if you're being honest, in the East. Even though Brooklyn Nets would be a disappointment if they don't win the title, Philadelphia is still really crazy too. So it's like those two, and then Milwaukee. We'll get into that later, but I'm saying as of right now, it's a 6-7 game series. I give it to Milwaukee though. Then we got the Knicks versus Atlanta. Oh boy, you know what I'm rocking today, baby. You know how it is. As a Knicks fan, I didn't think we were going to be here. Honestly, I thought we were going to be a play-in tournament team. This once the play-in tournament was announced this year, I thought we were aiming for that with the roster we had. Didn't expect Julius Randle to have that type of jump as he did. I'm not complaining. RJ Barrett's one of the most underrated players in the league. I mean, and I'm not in the league. I mean, I'm just saying for like that sophomore class, like he deserves a little bit more like to be hyped up or something, because he took a jump up statistical categories in all of them, in every single one, and field goals and like percentages too. He shot more efficient this year too, and more points per game. Come on, man, you can't tell me he's not improving. And the one underrated factor of RJ Barrett that I really love is that when it matters most when the game's down to the stretch, he can be clutch. He can be really more clutch than you think he is. He's got already like 3 to 4 game-winning shots made, or game-winning situations, or under the butt. Like, I don't know how to specifically word it, but he's got a couple layups, a couple 3-pointers, a couple free throws to win games. Like, he comes through when you need him to. So that's the one thing I wanted to say before I go on. Now, I'm not gonna act like this series is gonna be a cakewalk for my Knicks. Are you kidding me? It's the Atlanta Hawks. They got this one guy named Trae Young. If you never heard of him, I mean, I got a Hawks jersey, but that's Dominique. That's not the same thing. He dunked. Trae Young is like Steph Curry range with a shot. And the thing is, Trae Young is really hard to play defense against, because he just tries to fool you and trick you into fouling him and flopping and all that. So you really can't like be that aggressive or close to him at times. So you just got to give him space sometimes. The problem is, in this regular season matchup, Trae Young hasn't been as great as you would want him to against us, the Knicks, because he can't deal with our aggressive defense. However, we're we focus our defense towards Trae Young so we can avoid him killing us during the games, which means that there's more opportunities for people like John Collins and Clint Capella, which is my biggest concern with our big man being so injury riddled this season. Mitchell Robinson out done for the season. We're starting our backup Nerlens Noel, and then our third stringer was Taj Gibson. He's our backup now, but sometimes he's starting too because Nerlens Noel is so banged up. So I'm really concerned for the big man matchups here because Julius Randle is going to have to be doing a lot then defensively, and we need him to be focusing on offense. But at the end of the day, I'm a big believer that in if you can stop a team from scoring and you just gotta make sure you score. I think the Knicks were gonna have this series in a 7-game series, not easily. It's gonna be very hard fought, grinded out games. I think the Atlanta Hawks are gonna have a tough time scoring against us in some games. I'm thinking games are gonna go under hundreds, is what I'm saying. Like I feel like Tom Thibodeau is really gonna tell these Knicks like, yo, I really don't care. We're not trying to score more points than them, but we're going to make sure we don't let them score nothing. Like, I feel like they're going to turn into another gear defensively, and they're just going to lock down and shut down the Atlanta Hawks. That's truly me being as honest as possible. So I got the Knicks in 7 games. Last matchup is the Philadelphia 76ers versus the 8th-seeded Washington Wizards. I was seeing the way that they made it into the play-in tournament, and like they lost the first game, but then they won the second game. Man, I'm hyped for Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal to have a playoff opportunity to just make some noise, just to get some appearances, just to do something. Because at the end of the day, Joel Embiid, Tobias Harris, Ben Simmons, and all the other role players that they have are all, oh my goodness, man. You can't really, it's that Philadelphia team is going to be a problem for anyone that matches up. They can switch so many matchups, and they can have so many different like matchups too. I don't know how to specifically word it. Like right now in the series versus Washington, for example, Ben Simmons can be on either Westbrook or he could be on Bradley Beal too. He could even be on someone like Rui Hachimura or Daniel Gafford. One of the bigs if they want to. They have so many defensive switch abilities, and that doesn't matter for matchups. So like, just the fact that you have Ben Simmons versus Russell Westbrook in a 7-game series, I just don't like the matchup for Westbrook because Westbrook takes advantage of being a taller guard against a league of small guards. But then in this matchup, you get a even bigger guard on Westbrook that might take away rebounds, might take away some of the movement he'll have driving to the rim. It's gonna be tough, man. It's a 6'10" defender on Russell Westbrook in this series is what it's looking like. And if it's not Westbrook, it'll be on Beal, and that doesn't make it even better. I mean, Beal is gonna need more space. But the problem is with this Philly team, they have so many defenders. If you put Simmons on Westbrook, you can put Tybalt, you can put Danny Green, you can put so many wing people that can actually play lockdown defense, and it's pretty scary to see, man. It is. Therefore, this series being a 5-game gentleman sweep, I don't think it'll be a sweep for Philly either. I think Washington's going to get a game, and maybe 2. You never know. If the matchup somehow favor Westbrook and Beal, I'll give it to Philly, though. So, for the West, I got Utah versus the Clippers. And what I'm gonna say here in this matchup is I'm still a little concerned about that Donovan Mitchell thing. I generally don't think that they'll have enough. I don't think Mitchell will be like 100% healthy either for this matchup. So not gonna have to go that much in detail about it because I just truly believe the Clippers will win in 6 games. I'll leave it at that. Unless Jordan Clarkson and Mike Conley had missed some time too at the end of the season, but no one mentioned it. What's going to happen with Mike Conley if he's not either 100% either? But I just have to give it to the Clippers because with the Clippers, I can at least know that with someone like Kawhi Leonard, the Clippers have the best player in the series if with a healthy Kawhi, right? I don't know if there anyone on the Jazz will be able to stop that. And then Rudy Gobert, I don't think he'll be able to play. He doesn't have much of this series because with the way the Clippers roll, they kind of roll some small ball lineups sometimes if Zubac's not having a good game. So I'll just give it to the Clippers. Then we got the Denver versus Lakers matchup, and as much as I love Denver and I'm supporting Denver because they were my bubble team, and I love Jokic, I like Michael Porter Jr. If the Lakers get by Phoenix, they're gonna get by Denver the same way. It'll be like a five. I'll make it a six game series because Jokic. I don't want to hear it unless AD is gonna be constantly on Jokic. Jokic gonna mollywop Andre Drummond like a rag doll. But if Lakers do small ball lineups or switch on matchups and do things, I still think Jokic is gonna be a little bit of a problem. But like I feel like a healthy AD will get the better of him in the matchup. So I'll have to give it to the Lakers in 6. They got Brooklyn versus Milwaukee. Now hear me out when I say this. I really want to give the nod to Milwaukee, man. I just really want to do it because I just feel like this Brooklyn team is gonna have a collapse somehow in this playoffs. Like they're gonna have the one series or the one couple games that are just gonna be like back-to-back losses or something that are just gonna be too much for them in their heads. I really do. But this matchup is weird to have to call because Giannis, with his narrative in the last couple of years in the playoffs, you think about it, the first time that he was actually in the playoffs, he lost in 7 games in the first round to the Boston Celtics. In a 7-game series that went game 7 went to overtime thanks to Chris Middleton making like a crazy bank shot from like the volleyball line. You know, like there's a lot. If you play in courts with volleyball with the volleyball court lines on, you know what I'm talking about. Then the year after that, they made it to the conference finals and ran into the wall that Toronto did with Kawhi Leonard, and they lost. They lost 4 games straight. That was pretty crazy. And then the year after that, if I'm not mistaken, they basically lost in the bubble in the second round because Giannis got hurt against Miami. I really think like Giannis is gonna come back with a vengeance and like he's gonna try to prove a point. The safe bet here is Brooklyn, right? The safe bet here is Brooklyn, but I wouldn't be surprised if Milwaukee gets the upset. That's why I'm gonna say Milwaukee wins in 7 games. I know. Amen. If I'm wrong, I'm not gonna complain because I'm telling you, I can understand. Brooklyn is clear on paper should be the favorite, but I could still see Milwaukee winning this in 7 games. Now my Knicks versus the Philadelphia 76ers. I'm not going to lie to you, man. I don't see much optimism in this series just because we haven't been able to beat the Philadelphia 76ers in the last 15 games, 15 times we have matched up against them in regular season wise. That's a lot of games that we just haven't. And I know this Knicks team is different. And when you look at it from like on paper, this season, all our games against them were close games. I know there were people missing because of injuries, like a Joel Embiid for 1 game. But even when Joel Embiid was in those games, we had close games against them. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Knicks are able to steal at least a game or even 2. But like the most I give the series is like a 6-game series, honestly. I got to give it to Philly. Joel Embiid's going to be too much for the Knicks to play. And I don't think that Nerlens Noel will be able to handle Joel Embiid that well. Nerlens Noel is a great defender. But if you have to have he's a great help defender and he's a great help I don't know what the term would be. But as a one-on-one post defender, he's just not able to hand with some of the bigs, like people like Jokic, the people like Bam, Nikola Vucevic, like Embiid's that are very crafty in the post, just get by him all the time. So I got to give it to Philly in 6 games. Now the conference finals matchups. Oh boy. Well, first off, Lakers Clippers. We've always wanted this series since both teams got bolstered by all the big names that they do still have. Narratives wise, I mean, LeBron against the team's rival and like the Kawhi Leonard narrative, and Paul George is a great player too against AD, like the sidekicks, whatever you want to make the narrative of. Also, Kawhi's the last year of his contract. He could leave the Clippers if they lose. If they win, they'll be symbolic, everything. Oh my goodness, if he can win it in the finals. there's too many storylines with this matchup. They play in the same stadium, so they don't have to travel. It's basically a 7-game series in the Staples. And this is going to be my thing. And hear me out. Hear me out. I have bet for the Lakers like this far when I really shouldn't have, not knowing how healthy, how 100%, how full cylinders this team is going to be. I just think they're eventually going to run into a wall, and that the Clippers are that wall. This Clippers team has been built to cater to Paul George and to Kawhi Leonard better. At points this season, it looked like a major struggle. Don't get me wrong, but I feel like the Kawhi is going to be able to take over this playoffs, and that he's just going to have another one of his runs, like the Toronto thing. At this point, it's a lot of mileage on LeBron and AD again, and I just don't know. You never know who could get injured too. So for purposes of these predictions, you can hate me if you want, but I'm going to pick the Clippers in a 7-game series, and that's just how it's going to be. I'm going to go for the Clippers just because I feel like the Kawhi and Paul George, they're going to take this as a revenge series, and they haven't even played the Lakers in the playoffs before, but they're just going to be like annoyed and vengeful on the fact that they were eliminated so early and never got to face the Lakers when they wanted it. That this time, if this ends up happening, the Clippers are going to take I think the Clippers just take it, man. I think the Clippers are going to get the Lakers off guard and just go on full cylinders. So, yeah, I say it's 7-game series. I give the Clippers the lead. That's the winner from the West. I know it's really crazy to say. And then we got the Philadelphia 76ers versus the Milwaukee Bucks. So I'm not going to front. If I'm putting Giannis to beat the Brooklyn Nets, I'm going to put Giannis to beat the Philadelphia 76ers just because it's my podcast, it's my predictions, and I don't really care what you have to say about it. Because I understand that this Joel Embiid and the Sixers are by far probably the greatest team this season that I've saw. And I don't want to diminish anything on Utah, but like when Joel Embiid was healthy, like this team was dominant teams by a lot of points. I know they're in the Eastern Conference and whatever, but they were still dominating. You can't say that. It'll be the first time that the Sixers team is this deep into the playoffs. I have more confidence in the Bucks because at least this Bucks team has been able to get out of the first round more times than this Sixers team. The Sixers core has. The Sixers core has been stuck to being a second round and a first round, and then first round before that. I don't know. Actually, only 2 playoff runs, and this Milwaukee's on their 3rd playoff run. This core specifically, I'll count Drew Holiday as part of the Eric Bledsoe era. I'm gonna give it to the Bucks, man. I think Giannis is gonna finally make it to the finals, and like this is gonna be either a crazy shining moment for him, or it'll be Kawhi's time to cement his legacy even further. So, finals matchup: 4th seeded LA Clippers versus the 3rd seeded Milwaukee Bucks. Now, I don't want to hear it because this has been already a weird season. So I feel like the top tier teams could still somehow, like later on in the tournament, just collapse and not have enough what it takes. So I'm going to have to say that if in this matchup, Chris Middleton's going to be a very big X factor here because I'm assuming Kawhi's going to have to be guarding Giannis, and then Giannis is going to have to be guarding Kawhi. So Chris Middleton, I'm assuming, would take the responsibility of guarding Paul George, right? Unless you want to go with a smaller, better defender in Drew Holiday. But I feel like that would be just too risky because Paul George's shooting ability, being able to get shots over smaller defenders like it's nothing because of his height, that'll be a little difficult in my opinion. I'm just saying. But it all depends matchups-wise. Like, for example, the Zubac-Brook Lopez matchup. What happens with that? A player like Pat Connaughton, a player like Dante DiVincenzo for the Bucks against people like Luke Kennard, the Reggie Jacksons, the Pat Beverleys, the Rondos. This is tough. I'm gonna give it to the Clippers, man. I think this Clippers team is going under everyone's radar just because like they were having a serious injuries too with like Kawhi Leonard this year. I think Paul George was out for like a couple weeks. It wasn't nothing crazy. It took him a while to get back into it, but like Paul George, like year, I'm probably gonna regret this, but I'm gonna pick the Los Angeles Clippers to win the NBA Finals this year, baby. That's my final prediction. I say this is gonna go as 6 games, probably. Nah. 7 games, just because it has to be, man. For it to be a great, awesome series, 7 games is a must. So let me know what you think of my predictions. Thank you for tuning in. I'm really hyped for these playoffs because it's a long time since we had playoff basketball, and I hope that these playoffs are worth the watch. To everyone that tuned in from either YouTube, SoundCloud, and everyone that tuned in for the episode, I'm very thankful for you guys for watching the episode, and peace out, baby.